Hello, the unspoken ladies, welcome to the channel. The child who learns to observe before speaking often grows into the adult who sees what everyone else misses. Have you ever noticed that some girls didn't look different as children? They simply noticed different things. While everyone else was busy chasing attention, fitting in and following the crowd, these girls were quietly collecting something far more valuable: patterns. They noticed who lied without blinking, who changed personalities to impress others, and who was genuinely kind only when no one was watching. They weren't trying to be mysterious, they were simply paying attention. Psychologists have long observed that childhood experiences shape how we interpret the world as adults. Some children become people-pleasers, others become followers, but a rare few develop an unusually sharp awareness of people, motives, and behavior at an early age. Not because life was easy, but because paying attention became their greatest survival skill. And let's be honest, while other kids were trading stickers or arguing over whose turn it was on the swings, she was probably wondering, why does the teacher smile at everyone except that one student? Not exactly your average playground concern. In today's video, we're uncovering 12 harsh truths about Sigma females as children. The surprising experiences, hidden behaviors, and quiet realizations that shaped them long before they ever understood who they would become. Some of these truths may explain your childhood in ways you've never considered, and a few might make you pause the video just to think. Let's begin. Number 1. Adults trusted her with secrets they should never have shared. One of the strangest parts of her childhood was that adults often treated her less like a child and more like a quiet therapist. It didn't happen because she asked questions or tried to get involved. It happened because she listened. She didn't interrupt, she didn't gossip, and she didn't rush to judge. That calm presence made people feel unusually comfortable around her. Before she was old enough to understand the weight of adult problems, she was already hearing about broken marriages, money troubles, family feuds, workplace drama, and disappointments that no child should have been carrying. A parent might vent after a stressful day. An aunt might complain about her husband. A teacher might reveal frustrations about life. Piece by piece, she was handed stories that belonged in adult conversations, not in the mind of a growing child. The harsh truth is that many adults mistake a quiet child for an emotionally equipped one. Those are not the same thing. Just because she could sit still and listen didn't mean she knew how to process what she heard. She absorbed it all without having the life experience to make sense of it. Over time, this changed the way she looked at people. She learned that adults weren't as confident or as put together as they appeared. The people she thought had all the answers were often just as confused, afraid, and uncertain as everyone else. That realization came years earlier than it does for most children. It also taught her to become incredibly careful with other people's trust. She knew what it felt like to carry someone else's emotional weight, so she rarely shared private conversations or betrayed someone's confidence. Loyalty became second nature, not because someone taught it to her, but because she understood the cost of broken trust. Number 2. She learned to read a room before she learned to join one. Most children walk into a room looking for fun. She walked into a room looking for answers. Before saying a word, she was already paying attention to everything around her. She noticed who looked genuinely happy, who was forcing a smile, who was trying too hard to impress everyone, and who seemed uncomfortable even while laughing. It wasn't something she consciously decided to do. It simply became her way of understanding the world. While other children rushed to make friends, she took her time. She watched conversations before joining them. She noticed which children made others feel included, and which ones only acted friendly when it benefited them. She quickly learned that words could be convincing, but behavior rarely lied. The child who always promised to share, but never did. the classmate who acted kind in front of teachers but became cruel when adults weren't looking. These small details never escaped her. This habit often made people think she was shy, quiet, or even distant. In reality, she wasn't avoiding people. She was studying them. She wanted to know whether someone was worth trusting before opening the door to a friendship. To her, first impressions were never enough. She believed actions always deserved a second look. As she grew older, this ability became one of her greatest strengths. She could often sense tension before an argument started. She noticed jealousy hiding behind compliments and insecurity hiding behind loud confidence. While others were surprised when someone's true character finally appeared, she usually wasn't. She'd been noticing the small signs all along. The downside was that this constant awareness could be exhausting. It became difficult to simply relax because her mind was always collecting information. She saw things that many people overlooked, and once you notice certain patterns, it's hard to pretend they aren't there. Number 3, she quietly tested people before letting them close. Trust was never something she handed out just because someone was nice for a day. Even as a child, she seemed to understand that words are cheap, but consistency is rare. While other children quickly called someone their best friend after one fun afternoon, she took a different approach. She watched. She waited. She paid attention to the little things most people ignored. She would notice whether someone kept their promises, even the small ones. If a classmate borrowed a pencil, did they remember to return it? If someone talked badly about another friend, she quietly wondered what they would say about her when she wasn't around. These tiny moments mattered because she believed they revealed a person's real character. She didn't test people with tricks or games. Her tests were silent. She simply gave people enough time to show who they really were. Most people are careful about the image they want others to see, but very few can pretend forever. She understood this long before she could explain it. Because of that, many people thought she was difficult to know. They assumed she was unfriendly or distant, when the truth was much simpler. She wasn't looking for more friends. She was looking for the right ones. There is a huge difference. The surprising part is that she rarely regretted waiting. While others found themselves caught in unnecessary drama or hurt by broken trust, she often avoided those situations because she had already noticed the warning signs. She understood that someone's character is revealed in repeated actions, not impressive first impressions. This habit stayed with her as she grew older. She became someone who valued loyalty over popularity, honesty over charm, and consistency over big promises. She knew that people can say almost anything to earn your trust, but only time can prove whether they deserve it. Number 4, she disappointed people by refusing to perform the personality they wanted. From a young age, people seemed to have an opinion about who she should become. Some wanted her to smile more. Others wanted her to talk more, be louder, be softer, be friendlier, be more like everyone else. It was as if the world had already written a script for her, and all she had to do was play the part. The problem was, she never liked pretending. She didn't laugh just because everyone else was laughing. She didn't join conversations simply to avoid looking different. If she wasn't interested, she stayed quiet. If she had something meaningful to say, she spoke. If she didn't, she saw no reason to fill every silence with words. That alone confused people. Adults often mistook her quiet confidence for stubbornness. Teachers sometimes thought she wasn't participating enough. Relatives wondered why she wasn't as outgoing as other children. Even other kids occasionally saw her as strange because she refused to copy whatever was popular that week. The more people tried to reshape her personality, the more uncomfortable she became. What many failed to realize was that she wasn't trying to be different. She simply didn't understand why she had to become someone else just to make other people comfortable. To her, pretending felt more exhausting than being misunderstood. This created an interesting pattern throughout her childhood. The people who valued appearances usually struggled to understand her, but the people who cared about honesty often appreciated her exactly as she was. She attracted those who preferred authenticity over performance. As the years passed, this refusal to wear emotional masks became one of her greatest strengths. She learned that fitting in can win temporary approval, but being genuine earns lasting respect. While many people spent years trying to rediscover who they really were beneath the roles they played, she had quietly protected that part of herself all along. Number 5. She remembered contradictions. Everyone else forgot. Some children remember birthdays, others remember their favorite cartoons or the games they played after school. She remembered something entirely different. She remembered contradictions. She noticed when someone said one thing but did another. A teacher who preached kindness but embarrassed a struggling student in front of the whole class. A parent who demanded honesty yet expected children to lie to visitors by saying, "Tell them I'm not home." A relative who constantly talked about family loyalty but disappeared whenever someone needed help. These moments stayed with her because they didn't make sense. Most people brushed them aside. She couldn't. The strange thing was that she wasn't trying to judge anyone. She was trying to understand people. She wanted to know why actions and words didn't always match. The more she watched, the more she realized that what people claimed to value wasn't always what they actually lived by. That realization changed the way she listened. She stopped being impressed by beautiful speeches, big promises, or emotional declarations. Instead, she watched for patterns. Anyone can sound convincing for 5 minutes. Living by your own words is much harder. This habit also made it difficult to fool her. Someone could put on a charming smile, say all the right things, and still leave her feeling unconvinced, not because she was negative, but because she had trained herself to compare words with behavior. If they didn't match, she quietly trusted what she saw instead of what she heard. As she grew older, this became one of the reasons people often described her as hard to deceive. She wasn't relying on luck or intuition alone. She had spent years developing the habit of noticing what others overlooked. The downside was that hypocrisy became impossible for her to ignore. Once you start seeing contradictions, you begin to notice them everywhere. It can be disappointing, even lonely, because you realize how often people expect others to follow rules they don't follow themselves. Number 6. She didn't need to be the smartest child. She needed to understand the system. People often assume that the child who gets the highest grades understands life the best. She knew those were two completely different things. While many children focused on getting the right answers, she quietly became interested in something else, the invisible rules that seemed to control everything around her. She noticed that the loudest child wasn't always the most confident. Sometimes they were simply the one who wanted attention the most. She realized that being popular didn't always mean being liked. In many cases, it just meant being noticed. She watched teachers praise certain students more than others, not always because they worked harder, but because they were easier to manage or fit a certain image. These observations taught her that life wasn't only about talent or intelligence. It was also about understanding how people think, what they reward, and why they make the choices they do. She became fascinated by the difference between what people said mattered and what actually earned respect, attention, or opportunity. That curiosity made her ask questions most children never thought to ask. Why does one person get blamed while another gets a second chance? Why do some people become leaders even when someone else is more capable? Why do people follow confidence so easily, even when it has no substance behind it? Instead of accepting the world exactly as it was presented to her, she looked beneath the surface. She wanted to know what was really happening, not just what everyone was told to believe. As she grew older, this way of thinking became one of her greatest advantages. She stopped being easily impressed by titles, popularity, or loud personalities because she understood that systems are built on human behavior, and human behavior is often driven by emotion, habit, and perception more than logic. Number 7. She rarely forgot how someone made her feel. She wasn't the kind of child who remembered every little detail. She could forget where she left her notebook, miss a homework assignment, or even forget someone's birthday. But there was one thing her heart seemed incapable of forgetting: how people made her feel. A single moment of genuine kindness could stay with her for years. The teacher who defended her when no one else did, the classmate who chose to sit beside her when everyone ignored her, the neighbor who spoke to her with respect instead of talking down to her just because she was a child. Those moments became permanent memories because they made her feel seen. The opposite was just as true. She never forgot the sting of being laughed at, dismissed, embarrassed, or made to feel invisible. It wasn't because she enjoyed holding grudges. It was because emotions leave deeper marks than events. Long after everyone else had forgotten what happened, she could still remember exactly how that moment changed the way she looked at a person. As a child, she didn't have the words to explain it. She only knew that some people made her feel safe, while others made her instinctively pull away. Over time, she learned to trust those feelings. Again and again, they proved to be more reliable than charming words or impressive appearances. This gave her an unusual way of choosing the people she kept close. She wasn't impressed by popularity, expensive gifts, or people who knew how to entertain a crowd. She paid attention to something much quieter. Did she feel respected around them? Did she feel accepted without pretending to be someone else? Did she leave their company feeling lighter or heavier? Those questions became more important than anything people said. Because of this, she became incredibly careful with how she treated others. She understood that people may forget conversations, jokes, and even names, but they often remember how someone made them feel long after everything else has faded. That lesson shaped her relationships for the rest of her life. Number 8. She didn't copy other children. She studied why they copied each other. From an early age, she noticed something that many children never questioned. The moment one child started doing something, everyone else seemed to follow. A new hairstyle became popular overnight. One child started using a certain word, and suddenly the whole class was saying it. One opinion became accepted, and anyone who disagreed was treated like they didn't belong. She found that fascinating. Instead of rushing to join in, she quietly wondered why so many people were afraid to be different. Why did children suddenly stop liking something just because the popular kids didn't? Why did they laugh at jokes they didn't even find funny? Why did they change the way they talked, dressed, or behaved just to fit into a group? The answers weren't obvious then, but the questions never left her. She began to realize that many people weren't making their own choices. They were borrowing them. They copied opinions before forming their own, followed trends before asking if they actually liked them, and agreed with the crowd simply because standing alone felt uncomfortable. That realization changed the way she saw confidence. She understood that real confidence isn't about getting people to follow you. It's about not feeling pressured to follow everyone else. This didn't make her rebellious for the sake of it. She wasn't trying to be different just to get attention. In fact, attention was often the last thing she wanted. She simply believed that if she was going to like something, believe something, or become someone, it had to come from her own thinking, not from the loudest voices around her. As she grew older, this mindset protected her from many of the traps that catch people. She was less likely to chase trends, seek approval, or measure her worth by what was popular. She understood that crowds change their minds far too quickly to build your identity around their opinions. Number 9. Silence became her greatest source of information. Most children were uncomfortable with silence. The moment a conversation slowed down, they rushed to fill it with jokes, stories, or endless chatter. She was different. Silence never felt awkward to her. In fact, it was often the moment when she learned the most. She noticed that people reveal themselves when they think no one is paying attention. The loudest person in the room often became quiet when someone more confident walked in. The child who acted fearless around friends suddenly looked unsure when standing alone. The teacher who smiled through the lesson let out a tired sigh once the classroom emptied. These small moments spoke louder than anything words could explain. While everyone else focused on what was being said, she paid attention to what wasn't. She noticed the pauses before someone answered a question, the forced smiles that disappeared in seconds, the uneasy glances across a room, and the sudden silence after someone's name was mentioned. Those tiny details often revealed emotions people were trying to hide. This habit made her seem unusually perceptive for her age. People were often surprised when she understood situations that no one had explained to her. The truth was simple. She wasn't guessing. She was observing. Silence gave her the space to notice the details that noise usually covered up. As she grew older, this ability became one of her greatest strengths. She didn't rush to judge people based on first impressions or dramatic speeches. She knew that words could be carefully chosen, but silence was much harder to control. In quiet moments, masks slipped, emotions surfaced, and real personalities quietly appeared. Of course, this also meant she sometimes carried more than she wanted. Seeing what others missed could be exhausting. She became aware of tension before arguments, sadness behind fake laughter, and loneliness hidden beneath confidence. It wasn't always easy to notice these things, but once she did, she couldn't simply ignore them. Number 10. She learned that loneliness and solitude were two completely different things. One of the hardest lessons she learned as a child was that being alone and feeling lonely are not the same thing. At first, she didn't understand the difference. She simply knew there were days when she felt invisible, even in a room full of people. Then there were other days when she was completely by herself and felt perfectly at peace. That difference changed everything. Loneliness usually came when she was surrounded by people who didn't understand her. She could be sitting in a classroom, laughing with classmates, or spending time with relatives, and still feel like she had no real connection with anyone. It wasn't the lack of people that hurt. It was the lack of being truly seen. Solitude felt completely different. It wasn't empty, it was freeing. It gave her space to think without interruption, enjoy her own interests without judgment, and hear her own thoughts without the constant noise of other people's opinions. While some children feared being by themselves, she slowly discovered that some of her happiest moments happened when no one expected anything from her. As she grew older, she stopped chasing company just for the sake of avoiding loneliness. She realized that the wrong people could make her feel far more isolated than being by herself ever could. That was a lesson many adults still struggle to accept. Because she became comfortable with solitude, she was never easy to pressure. She didn't join unhealthy friendships just to fit in. She didn't stay where she wasn't respected simply because she was afraid of being alone. She knew peace was too valuable to trade for temporary acceptance. That didn't mean she didn't value relationships. She did. But she wanted relationships that added to her peace, not ones that constantly disturbed it. She understood that meaningful connection should never come at the cost of pretending to be someone she wasn't. Number 11. She wasn't afraid of being wrong. She was afraid of pretending. From a young age, she understood something that many people spend years avoiding. Admitting you don't know something is far better than pretending you do. While others were focused on looking smart, she was more interested in actually learning. She didn't need to win every conversation or appear perfect in front of everyone. She valued truth more than image. This sometimes made her stand out. In a world where children often competed to look confident, she was willing to say, "I don't know," when she genuinely didn't have the answer. She wasn't embarrassed by uncertainty because she saw it as an opportunity to grow. For her, pretending to understand something was a much bigger weakness than simply admitting she needed more time to learn. She noticed how often people changed their opinions just to avoid looking different. Some children agreed with the group even when they secretly disagreed. Some repeated things they didn't understand because they wanted to appear knowledgeable. She found this strange because she couldn't understand why someone would trade their honesty for a few moments of approval. As she grew older, this mindset protected her from becoming someone who lived for appearances. She learned that confidence doesn't come from always being right. Real confidence comes from being comfortable enough to admit when you are wrong and strong enough to improve. Of course, this honesty wasn't always easy. People sometimes misunderstood her directness. Some saw her willingness to question things as stubbornness, and others mistook her silence for a lack of knowledge. They didn't realize she was simply refusing to fake certainty. The truth was, she respected reality more than reputation. She would rather be temporarily judged for not knowing something than permanently trapped by pretending to know everything. Number 12. She quietly realized that many adults never really grew up. One of the most surprising discoveries she made as a child was realizing that getting older doesn't automatically mean becoming wiser. Many children believe adults have everything figured out. They assume grown-ups are confident, responsible, and always know the right thing to do. She slowly discovered that this wasn't always true. She noticed that some adults were simply children with bigger responsibilities. They still wanted attention. They still compared themselves to others. They still became jealous, insecure, and emotional when things didn't go their way. The only difference was that they had better excuses and more complicated problems. Instead of arguing over toys, they argued over status. Instead of competing over playground popularity, they competed over money, achievements, and social image. This realization was confusing at first. She wondered why some people who demanded respect didn't always show respect. Why some adults told children to control their emotions while struggling to control their own. Why some people preached lessons they didn't follow themselves. The more she observed, the more she understood that age and maturity were not the same thing. A person's birthday could increase, but their self-awareness might not. Some people grew older without ever truly examining their behavior. This lesson changed how she viewed authority. She still respected people, but she stopped believing that every adult automatically had all the answers. She learned to judge wisdom by actions, not by age or position. It also made her more independent in her thinking. Instead of blindly accepting advice simply because it came from someone older, she paid attention to whether that person actually lived by the principles they taught. The strange part was that this awareness often made her seem older than her years. While other children saw adults as perfect figures, she saw them as human beings, capable of kindness, mistakes, strength, and weakness. The childhood of a Sigma female is not simply a story about being quiet, different, or independent. It is a story about awareness developing earlier than expected. While many children were learning how to fit into the world around them, she was quietly studying it. She was learning how people behaved, how trust was built, how character was revealed, and how important it was to remain true to herself. The experiences that shaped her were not always easy. Carrying the emotions of others, noticing things people tried to hide, feeling misunderstood, and refusing to become someone she wasn't all played a role in creating the person she would eventually become. What looked like distance was often observation. What looked like stubbornness was often self-respect. What looked like being different was simply a refusal to lose herself. The biggest lesson is this: the traits that make someone stand out are often formed long before the world recognizes them. The child who observed quietly, questioned deeply, and protected her authenticity was already building the foundation for the woman she would become. If you recognized yourself or someone you know in these experiences, remember that being different is not always a weakness. Sometimes it is the beginning of understanding yourself on a much deeper level. If you enjoyed this exploration and want more powerful insights into personality, human behavior, and the hidden traits that shape extraordinary individuals, make sure to subscribe to the Unspoken Ladies. Turn on notifications so you never miss our next journey into the psychology, mindset, and untold stories behind fascinating personalities. Thank you for watching, and remember, understanding yourself is the first step toward mastering your own path.